I'd like to introduce Damandeep, right? So, Jacqueline, if you share your screen, Damandeep is today's expert, and he is actually literally an expert on growth. He's one of those people which have been running behind to, give us time for this session, and I'm, glad that he could make it out from his schedule. As a background for Damandeep, he's currently obviously the chief business officer at Global Bees, which is one of those, really popular roll-ups. One of a few of, I think one or two members in our cohort is, by the way, a Global Bees company. I think that would be Prolixa. And the second thing is, before Global Bees, Daman was, the VP of growth at Boat. He's had a phenomenal history in running growth teams at other organizations also, which is either, the VP of marketing at Milk Basket, chief marketing officer at MobiQuick, earlier running Line, which is, like a WhatsApp competitor from Japan in their India operations. So Daman is literally one of the people behind setting up, the growth parlance or the industry in India, as I might say. He's obviously been very, very vocal, and he'll be a great speaker. So, first I would like to, I'm really glad that Daman could make it with us. And that being said, Daman, welcome to Expert, and we look forward to your session. Thank you so much, for taking over.
Thanks, Sharad. Thanks for the welcome and the creepy picture that you found of me.
Sorry, last minute maybe, but
okay. Hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to share some of my thoughts. I'm
just yeah. One request. I think maybe your video is not clear to us. Is that accurate for other people also? Yeah.
1 second. Is it fine now?
Yeah. No, actually, yeah, now much better. Yes. We were otherwise seeing like a shadow more than the creepy picture.
Got it.
Awesome.
Got it.
Great.
Yeah, I've got this thing which just shuts down. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So I've got rights to share my screen, right? Yeah. So first of all, I would just like to put it out there. I'm a big proponent of D2C products. Given a choice, I would love to buy a product that a local entrepreneur has built. So after this call, if you want to share any of your products, and I'll buy all of them, right? I don't want any freebies. I would love to go to them, see what amazing work, love goes into building a product today and bringing it out to the market. Having said that, over the years when I built my teams up, I figured out that the best way to learn is to share your knowledge and to share your thoughts, because that kind of crowdsources your learning to a next extent. Because people start saying, this doesn't work here, and what you're saying is motherhood and apple pie statements. Ye India mein nahi chalta hai. So a lot of my growth learnings have been more by people telling me that I'm wrong, rather than me doing the right thing. Having said that, that's one of the core principles that we have in my growth team, which is no fear of failure, right? Because a coder knows what he needs to do. He needs to compile the code, create a module. A CA knows what he needs to do. He needs to balance the books. A growth person has no freaking idea how he's going to drive growth on the first of the month, right? A growth team member will continuously keep running experiments in a logical way using some frameworks, and then try to reach to the goal that the company has to reach. Now, to be able to do that, there are some structures, there are some frameworks that we use not only at Global Bees but at Boat and Milk Basket, and I'll take it to one of those live examples also, so that it becomes relatable. And feel free to batter me with your questions. I love that. So let me just dive into the presentation right now. And in case you have any questions, you can just keep putting it in the chat box. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we can.
Okay, cool. Let me just. Oh yeah, just a shameless plug. I also run my own narcissistically titled website called damansoni.com, which when I get time, I publish a lot of the frameworks. I publish a lot of the ideas that I've tried. So feel free to go there for some nifty tricks. I'm sure you'll find some stuff helpful over there. Okay, so let's start with the 4 pillars of growth, the way I like to call it. So the first pillar is organic, which is basically a function of how well you built up your brand, how well you're doing SEO and ASO, uh, and how many people are organically looking for your brand, or looking for a problem that they're trying to solve and end up on your website or on your app, right? So the metric to measure this whole effort is measuring the organics coming onto your app, or to your site. And the easiest tool to do that is Google Analytics, or you can even look at the Google Console for your company, right? Now, creating organics is easier said than done. Okay, there are a lot of SEO techniques wherein you start looking at building high intent keywords into your website and app. But there's also this function of creating a brand recall, right? If you're doing something awesome and you're talking about it and you've got the right influencers there and everything, the organic traffic keeps coming in. Then we have paid, right? This is the fun marketing stuff that everyone sees. Oh, TPC ho raha hai, cricket ground pe, I can see my logo. I'm doing a lot of paid acquisition ads, a lot of CPC, CPI, CPAs, so paid marketing across channels. This is the stuff that is really, really loud. And obviously there's a lot of money thrown behind this problem. And the stuff that we measure, the kind of metrics that we look at paid is upper funnel metrics. And then we go deeper funnel, as and when our telemetry gets tightened, we have more metrics flowing in, right? Then comes product. This is basically not the product you're selling. That's one part, but the medium which you're using to sell the product. For example, your website is your product, right? Once the user comes in, how's the customer experience over there? Can he reach to the buy button with minimal number of clicks? Can he check out as soon as possible? How many scrolls uh, does it require for the user to see the top 5 products in a website? How is the discovery happening? Is there a sale? How are you communicating the sale? How is the referral program running? So you see, a lot of tech stuff goes into this. And today, uh, I'm just giving D2C as a background here, so it will help, rather than going into payments like MobiKwik or groceries, so that just helps me follow my thought through with one vertical. So for a D2C engine, I mean, even your Amazon page is a product, for example. So Amazon is working on the technical side of the product for you, which is awesome. But if you're running your own website, right, you'll have to figure out a platform which helps you do a lot of these things swiftly. Every time you try to do some changes on the product and you say, I have to go back to tech, that kind of elongates your time to run a growth experiment, right? That makes it more difficult for you to make the engine go faster. So from a product point of view, on day 0, if you start saying, okay, you know what, besides creating this awesome skin cream that I've created with all the research and R&D, if I also put in a lot of effort in how I can sell it through my own property, I think that will help you accelerate your growth dramatically. And these are what we call the pirate metrics. That's what we track, and I'll go to pirate metrics going forward. And the last one, what a lot of growth managers miss out is partnerships, right? And this is not stuff like, I'll put my logo on your site and you put your logo on my product. This is not something like that. This is deep partnerships that we're talking about, right? To give you a few examples, at MobiKwik, we were up against Paytm, right? Not as well funded as that. And we needed to get a ton of users, and paid was not working out that well because it's costly, right? So we went to Ola and said, why don't we integrate MobiKwik as a payment partner into Ola? And Bhavish said, you know what, I've got Ola money, I don't need it. And then he flipped it around and he said, why don't we allow Ola to be booked from a MobiKwik app using MobiKwik money? So Ola felt they can get the users, the MobiKwik users who've not signed up for Ola money as as someone who can ride the cab, move them off Uber. We felt that we can tap into into a huge use case. This is the first time that Ola allowed a wallet other than Ola Money to be used, right? So this required, so partnerships done. Then it required work on the product, wherein a single tap from the MobiKwik app fires up the entire Ola functionality within the app, and let's say user use it. Now, why would someone want to book a cab from MobiKwik? Because we had something like Super Cash at that point in time, which is a loyalty program, which reduces your cab fare by anywhere between 2 rupees to 10 rupees. Now, in cab, our insight was if the cab fare is reduced by that amount, user switches onto the other side. This partnership alone got us 15,000 transactions a day, the day it went live. And from there, it just grew. So, minimal money spent, just a 15 days tech effort by both the teams, got this thing running, and no marketing dollars were spent on this, by the way, because the discovery was right up there when the user fires the app. So, the metric to measure this is how many users you're getting from the partners, right? How many buyers, how many customers you're getting from the partners. That's the right metric to measure a partnership deal, right? So this is the first framework. So all these frameworks go very deep, right? Today I'm sharing this at a very, very high level. Like in organic also, we break this up. The organic framework itself has around 20 slides around it, but that's for another day. So this is your typical pirate metrics, what they look like, right? Acquisition, activation, retention, referral revenue. I think Sharad and his team must have shown this funnel to you a gazillion times, right? And this is what we call the growth funnel. Okay, so I'll move quickly past this. Today we have what we call growth loops, right? Which is how can I build compounding engines, right? Where a new user comes in, performs an action, and does an output which brings in another new user. So if we are doing a paid acquisition today, we say, okay, this new user is our referral rate is X, so we're actually getting 1.3 users, right? So that's how we kind of do this. Now a referral loop cannot be built if the product is not in place, right? So growth loops are easier said than done, but they require a lot of investment on the product side of things for you to be able to build a growth, right? So even if I take the D2C parlance, if I've ordered something from a website, and if it gives me a referral code within the box, which is attractive, so that means you start getting the referral rate built in, and every and your basically ROAS number that you're looking at, right? The denominator becomes bigger for you, right? So your sorry, your numerator becomes bigger. So your ROAS improves for every dollar that you spend. So these days, whenever you look at any growth experiment that you're running, figure out what the loop is there in that, right? Figure out how you can create a compounding engine using some of the growth hacks that you're building into your company, right? And it's pretty easy to do this if you ask the question, what is the secondary benefit that I'm getting from this particular experiment? Your primary benefit may be getting a user. Your secondary benefit may be getting an upsell, cross-sell, another user, another referral, so on and so forth, right? If you keep that at the back of your mind, you say, okay, and not every experiment will convert into a loop, right? So, but before you finish the meeting of saying that, okay, this is a new growth tactic you're doing, just spend at least 5 minutes saying, what is the secondary KPI that we can move using this growth tactic, and you'll start getting into deeper discussions, and unfortunately your meetings will run far longer if once you start having these discussions. Okay, these are some of the companies which I just wanted to quickly touch upon, to give an example of the growth loop. Every time you search something on Google, Google not only gives you the result, but also feeds that result back into the engine to see how can I show a better result to the next person searching for the same keyword so that the user clicks on the first page itself, right? Paytm had a paid growth loop, right? Wherein it spent a ton of money on trying to get users onto the platform, but they ran a very strong referral engine so that every time a user comes in, there is something baked in for the referral. Because and this I'm talking about 2016, wherein they spend a ton of money on TV series and everything. So everyone joining in, within the first 3 days, they would get a notification saying that refer a friend, and then you make up to 200 rupees, right? So that got uh, uh, that engine going in. Pinterest, pretty straightforward. Every time you go to Pinterest, you create a pin. You've created content for Pinterest, which is structured in such a way that the Google engine finds that content pretty fast, right? So you are actually building the SEO for Pinterest, right? So that's a growth loop. For every visitor, organic visitor that comes in, creates content, uh, uh, some sort of content is created so that the next organic visitor can come in automatically. So and similar, if I look at Flipkart or Amazon, every time a buyer, every time a sale is done, the buyer gets an email after 15 days saying that why don't you review it. So a buyer submits a review, the next buyer sees more trust into that product, so that that product gets sold again. So a lot of these companies, they constantly look at growth loops and they keep working on the growth loops. On, for example, in Flipkart, how can I get a review faster? How can I get a review better? How can I get a richer review? Right? This can be done by I say, okay, I send an email. If the person is not responding to the email, probably I can send a WhatsApp to the user so that I can get a review for that. Or if I log in and I'm trying to do a purchase, I can after the person's done the purchase the second time, I can throw in a notification saying that, you know what, you bought something 15 days ago, why don't you give us a review for that, right? So, or you can incentivize a review. So there are multiple ways to run these engines, and you need to figure out what your spot is. Do you want to spend some money on it? Do you want to make it organic, or do you want to make it a part of the entire customer customer life cycle by marketing automation? Okay, so this is the primary difference, right, from a growth loop and a growth funnel. The conversation you have is, what is, how many users are we getting in the week 2, in week 3? So in your companies, when you're running growth, if you, I mean, we use the funnel as a word very common. At least I get to hear it 10 times a day. But I get very happy if I hear the word loop at least 3 times a day, because I know someone in the team is looking at how to leverage whatever we are doing to get some incremental benefit for us. So these are the you got to keep your ears open for such kind of parlance and words being going on in the office, and you know you're on the right path. Right. Like I said, we've got an overall framework of the 4 pillars. We okay, now decided we're going to go down growth loops. Then we got to run growth experiments, right? Like I said, growth is a process, right? It's not a destination saying that, I've got $1 million ARR, now I'm grown. No, I mean, you're constantly going to be doing something or the other, so that you can grow from there or even play defense from that point in time. So to be able to do that, you need to be running experiments constantly. And this is, if you remember your chemistry slide in, I think, class 8, where they taught us how to run an experiment. This is pretty much that. I'm not reinvented anything over here, right? And what I want to show you is how we run experiments and how we measure it, how the team is incentivized to run experiments. And let's talk a bit about that before we figure out how to run experiments. In my teams, appraisals don't go bad if the experiments fail. Appraisals go bad if you don't come up with approved experiments as a growth manager or as a growth executive. So Our global bees, I think we run uh, over 100 experiments a week now. That's because we're running we're working on multiple companies. But a company like MobiQuick and MilkBasket, we used to be running at around 10 experiments a week, right? And experiments can only be run if you've been able to measure the results and you've been measure the input and the output metrics, like Sharat started this whole conversation with. So to be able to run an experiment, you need to be able to invest in the product to be able to measure what you're doing, right? Otherwise, the experiment is just moot. So it's very important to develop the team culture wherein they say, you know what, we've come up with the experiment, this is the hypothesis, but you don't hold them to the out to the result. You say, you've tried hard, we figured out, we've got a learning, and then we move on to the next things. A best practice that I follow is we have a failure handbook, wherein we say, okay, we've done an experiment, failed. So let's, print it out and just put it in a file over here. So then someone's bored and thinking of new experiments, he can see that this is already tried. The most common example that I've seen is whenever a new paid acquisition guy comes in or a new SEO guy comes in, like, you know what, let's focus on these keywords. And then you get into conversation, nahi, हमने ये try किया था, ये नहीं हुआ, and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of hearsay. And there was another guy a year ago who used to do this. Best part is just codify it. Say, you know what, this was the scenario at that point in time. This is what we did. This is why we failed. Unless you tell me the Google's algo has changed, or the competition has changed, or the user behavior has changed, there's no point in running the experiment again, because you'll keep achieving the same result, or we do something else, right? So having a failure handbook is quite effective, and this can be as simple as a 4 to 5 liner result of an experiment, right? And you just keep putting it in a folder or in a Microsoft Teams task list or something like that, so that people can just go there and skim through it. Coming back to the experiments, early on we did a lot of mistakes by uh, creating experiments like, let's increase the conversion. It was I mean, we increased the conversion, but we had no idea what we did to increase the conversion. So we said, let's start making them tighter. Let's be true to ourselves and say, let's create a good example of, let's create a good experiment hypothesis and a result that we're looking for. Otherwise, we're just wasting our time. We're just hoping that our experiment works, right? So then, I'm taking through that example, right? We said we want to increase conversions. Okay, you know what? Sign-ups will increase. Too vague, no metrics, no target. So we said, you know what? A better way would be, okay, we are changing our landing pages. We're going to show city-specific imagery on each of the landing pages and say, Delhi loves to use MilkBasket. Why don't you try it? Gurgaon, over 2,000 neighbors of yours use MilkBasket. Why don't you try it? That kind of stuff, rather than just figure out 10 different ways and not know what has worked. And then you actually write the experiment down. Now, this is very important, right? Because the tech team doesn't know what you have in mind, right? You have to actually tell them, boss, ये मुझे ये करना है. And the best way to do it, to communicate with the tech team, is to write a note, because they are going to build what you ask them to build. Okay, if you say I want to test landing pages per city, they should be able to track that which IP the user has come from, right? And what is the conversion rate? They should be able to give you data which says conversion rate for a group of IPs is this, and for another group of IPs is another. They should be able to set up Google GA for you, which is the easiest way to figure out IPs. So involve the tech team early on when you're running the experiment and tell them this is what we need. Now you realize running an experiment with a simple thing saying increase sign-up conversion, you are running blind, but by the time you make it very clear, you realize to build this whole thing out is going to take 2 to 3 days now, right? So once you figure out that you need to run experiments like this, you start creating an experiment backlog, and we'll come to that, right, in a while. And obviously then there's the analysis, which is pretty straightforward, where you do a comparison of the conversion rate against the city. If it's working, very good, this works, let's roll it out. This becomes table stakes for us. If not, on to the next experiment. right? So like I said, you're going to be running multiple experiments. How do you track it, right? You create a growth board basically, wherein you create a list of experiments, you put them on a calendar, you tabulate results, and you share it with the product and the marketing teams. Okay, and you remember those pirate metrics we spoke about, right? One second. Yeah. Yeah. So what you can do is when you're listing on the experiments, list it down for the stage of funnel for which you're looking to run the experiments, right? If you're looking for on acquisition, you can put in stuff which requires budget. And a lot of the experiments don't require budgets, right? Uh, so even something as writing a PS in an email and reiterating your CTA, that itself is an experiment. Now, to be able to run an experiment like this, you need to at least write it down, because you'll have to ask someone in the tech team, say, you know what, whatever emailer goes out, put this in the footer, right? And create a big footer which has something like this. Put an image around it. So similarly, you create experiments around retention, around revenue, right? So on and so forth. I mean, these are just some of the experiments which we had run. Uh, we just put them out here. Some of the experiments will help you drive growth to a certain stage. The growth tactics that you will use from 0 to 100 cannot be used from 100 to 1000, but sometimes they're required. For example, sending handwritten card to customers, right? Doing things that don't scale is very important early on when you're starting your company. Roll out the red carpet for your first 100 customers. No questions asked. These are going to be these are going to be your brand ambassador. These are going to actually be your influencers and your unpaid influencers, right? So don't spend time running after someone with 10,000 followers. Use the first 100 customers, roll out the red carpet for them, and uh, see what content they can generate for you, right? So your experiment can be uh, generating content, generating 50 content pieces from the first 100 customers, right? And then you start figuring out what all stuff that needs to be done. This is what a typical growth board looks like at a company, right? So we write the experiment, we put the funnel stage that we are in. Okay, we put in some notes so that we make some sense out of it, and then we use the ICE matrix, which is the impact that this is going to have on growth, the confidence with which I think my hypothesis will stand, and the ease of implementing the experiment. Here I've just given equal weightage to them and just put a score of saying, just average all these things out. So the ones with the higher score is the ones you start picking on and start executing, typically, right? So that's the easiest way to just go about it. Other than that, obviously there'll be stuff which is imperative for business to grow at a certain point in time. So you may want to prioritize on that. But this is a very reasonable prioritization matrix for you to work with your growth team. And uh, once you start putting stuff here and you're going to see whether the experiment is successful or failure, you start seeing patterns over here, right? And what's working. Is frequent communication to my consumers working? Should I be able to up my game a little bit on that, or does my user want to be left alone after he's bought uh, something from me, right? So you'll get a lot of ideas just by putting these experiments. And sometimes, so this also becomes like a whiteboard for the team, right? Someone has an idea, you put in here, and you say, when in the next weekly growth meeting, we're just going to thrash out that idea. We're going to spend 10-15 minutes on it to see if we can improve something over here. And these are all real life experiments that are put over here, right? So for example, on the search page in Milk Basket, when you go to search, you'll see search icons like Nirma, Pepsi, that kind of stuff, because we see people type a lot of that into things. So we say, why make people type Pepsi? Let's just write the word Pepsi so people can click it, and that opens up the search page for Pepsi. So we started doing stuff like this again, and I'll tell you why we did that also, because I've got a long Milk Basket example following the. Yeah. Okay. So we've got some growth frameworks in mind, a very initial framework, which is the 4 pillars. We've understood what growth loops are. We figured out that we need to run experiments for them. Now, why are we needing to run experiments, right? With to go closer to a North Star metric, right? And I think Sharad put it very beautifully about input metrics and output metrics, right? So typically, I mean, a lot of companies have revenue as a North Star metric. It's not bad at all, but I would say that's typically a lazy metric, right? Because no, revenue is what your customers give you. Value is what you give them. पहले value दोगे, फिर revenue आएगा. Right now, to create that value, what is a metric that helps you deliver that value or articulate that value? So, North Star metric also, if you want to rejig it and think about it, this is the one metric which brings the entire company together. It is not the responsibility of the growth team, not the responsibility of the marketing team or the branding team. It is the responsibility of marketing, growth, ops, finance, everyone. And I'll show you how to break down the North Star metric, because a lot of literature has been written around North Star metric, but not many folks talk about how to make it a tangible way of things for companies. So for Airbnb, number of nights booked is the one that is the metric that brings maximum value to the company, right? More nights booked means more people are booking nights, or same people are booking more nights, right? And net that's going into revenue. And if the experience is not good, my number of nights booked is going to decrease, right? I mean, we've seen with some of the leading hotel chains in India, some of them pretty well funded, that I mean the user experience breaks down very frequently, and people use that as a secondary option to stay, right? So a lot of thought needs to be goes into building what your North Star metric is. Like Spotify, spent listening. If my recommendation engine is not good, I will move out, right? If my uh, streaming quality is not good, I will move out. So tech, product, uh, your data science teams, all get involved in building, in moving towards Shopify's time spent to listening, taking that to a higher level, so on and so forth. What you might want to think about is what is the North Star metric that your company has, and and how do you go about it. But a lot of you may think, यार मैं तो सामान बेच रहा हूँ, right? I am selling cookies, or I'm selling shoes. How the heck is North Star? What's the North Star metric for me, right? So I'll give you an example, a walkthrough, so that this will just help you thinking in how to think about a North Star metric. And by the way, do not get me wrong, revenue is a good North Star metric. You can go with that. But if you just delve deeper, you may probably come up with a better metric for your company. What happened here? Okay, so before I break this down, the live example, here's some more jargon for you, right? And this is a loaded slide. North Star metric can be broken into one metric that matters many times. So a lot of times I hear founders says, this is the metric that matters for me. What you want to think about is, does this metric matter for me for 1 month, or is this the long-term metric for my company? If it is not the long-term metric for your company, it is something which you want your team to focus on, and you create a squad around that, saying that, in the next 2 months, I want you to figure out our conversion rate and make sure it is above 2%. Beauty personal care category mein 2% se upar hai. Okay, let's figure out that metric. And then you start creating experiments around that. So, but you have to understand that conversion rate may not be a not summit, right? So, and what you're focusing is on a short-term metric, which is totally fine. Okay, so your one metric that matters, the ones that you're focusing on, will ultimately lead you to your North Star metric. So that is something which you may want to think about, that what is the metric that we want to look at. Okay, at Millbasket, the North Star metric that we wanted to look at was monthly groceries delivered on time. So just to give everyone a quick, 30-second primer on what Millbasket does. Millbasket is an app wherein a user logs in, tops up the app with money, and before 11 p.m. every night, just keeps adding whatever groceries they want to the basket, and they don't need to check out. And next day, before 7 a.m. in the morning, the basket is delivered to their house, and the doorbell doesn't ring. That's the business model. Now, this is a grocery delivery app. And what is the one metric that matters? I mean, you can say, yeah, we want revenue, but what we figured out is monthly groceries delivered on time is something that we wanted to go after, because we had metrics like this before that, that mean number of time that a user opens up the MobiKwik, the Milk Basket app to order was around 12 times a month, right? The average number of groceries in a basket were X, right? There were certain products which were on subscription, like milk, some were not. So our funda was, if we deliver groceries, more number of groceries to the user, we are home. Then we figured out, if we don't put time as a variable into this, our value proposition breaks. So if the mother is not getting 3 packets of Amul before 7 a.m. in the morning, before the kid goes to school, we are screwed. The mother will lose trust in a brand and say, you know what, I'm going to go back to my old milk. वो at least 6 बजे तो आ जाता था. So we figured out monthly groceries delivered on time was the North Star metric which we wanted to gun towards. Now, what did this mean? If I have to deliver more monthly groceries as a company, which means I have to get more users, means the user acquisition team need to roll in, or I have to get the existing users to come in and buy more, which is either come more times a month, or put more groceries in a basket. And I need to be able to deliver these groceries efficiently. Between 11 a.m. and 7 a.m. I need to get these groceries over to all my users. Okay, so we broke the monthly groceries delivered on time North Star metric into 4 sub-metrics. Now let's go deeper into each of these sub-metrics. So more users, how can I use more users and take that towards monthly groceries per time? So more users coming into the system, I need to drive conversions up. I need to get them to find groceries. Now you remember that experiment of ours that I mentioned, where we hard-coded Pepsi as a search term on the search page, right? So we said, stop the top 10 searches, we should hard-code them. Then we figured out, you know what, over a period of time, let's develop tech so that every week the top 5 searches are figured out and they come up as search terms, predefined search terms. Then we enhance the tech even more, saying that for every user, the top 5 search terms, let's make sure those come up as they come on a personalized level. So the tech started figuring out how to convert new users into more monthly groceries per time. Now, okay, we've solved the search problem. Purchase. On the purchase side, I remember us changing a payment gateway so that the success rates were high. Adding more payment routes so that the user could pay easily, so on and so forth, right? Partnering with different payment apps who are giving cashback at that point in time, so that the user doesn't mind charging the wallet more. And then comes supply and delivery. For Milk Basket, we ran a very low inventory model. So the prediction models had to be very good. We had to know that how many liters, 1,000 liters of milk we needed now, 1 week down the line, 1 month down the line, given the new users coming in. So the supply chain had to figure out that. Delivery had to figure themselves out, saying that, you know what, and the way Milk Basket works is a small tempo leaves the godown and it goes and services the building, right? So, and we had to then figure out, do we need bigger tempos for this building if they're going to order more, or do we need to send 2 of them? If yes, then what's the cost, so on and so forth. And how many do we need? And how many backups do we need? So just a simple thing like more users got the whole company together to gun towards monthly groceries per time, right? Even for more users, we broke it down into 4 pillars: organic users, paid users, referral users, incentivized users. What is the conversion rate for each one of them? And then how do we go towards monthly groceries delivered on time, right? And even more users, there were new users that are coming in. There are existing users who we want to make sure are not churned. And we had a campaign for people who have churned. How do we bring them back? Right. So the growth team had a target for reactivating users every month. So what happens? What we realize sometimes when users go on holidays, they forget to switch on their subscriptions when they come back. Right. So we had to find that pattern out, work with tech to make sure that an auto notification comes. More usage. More usage means more items per order. More items per order means I need more categories. Where I need more oils, more butters. We started introducing flowers, puja flowers. Then during festival season, we started having puja items. How I have to make sure that the pricing of these is very close to what the prices available on other platforms. So we wrote a scraper to figure out what the pricing is, what the price differential is, and if the price differential is more than 10%, the supply chain guys would get a notification saying that, you know what, the price is different, people aren't going to buy. Then discovery. Discovery was a very important thing. Do people come via search, or do they come via banner? Or if the category is there, where do I let the user figure out where the category is? We built a recommendation engine so that they could figure out what they wanted, and even that search term was a part of the recommendation. Basically, we know you search for Pepsi very often, so we put a Pepsi tag over there. And then discounts and coupons, right? Which helps drive a certain amount of traffic. So you see, more users just did not mean discounts, which is typically the lazy option for us, saying, "Acha, ye price gira do, ya coupon de do." You know, so it's a lot more. Then we went to frequency. We knew that people who had recurring orders ended up spending more. So we said, how many recurring orders do we have on a day? How do we increase that? Do we increase that using notifications to the users or recommendation to the users saying that, you know what, you order chicken from us every 10 days. Why don't you put chicken breast piece as on a recurring order for us, right? Then we figured out people are ordering fruit, and there were a lot of bachelors on the thing. So we created something called a fruit boat, which was 3 different cuts, which was cuts of 3 different fruits, and every day you would get 3 different fruits in your basket every morning, right? So we started coming up with stuff like that. So more orders is, do we create more sales? Do we create more coupons? Do we create more reminders for users to be able to increase the number of orders? And then we came to efficiency, which is basically percentage of orders delivered on time. Now, this is a very complex variable, right? It's dependent on all these different folks that you see on the right. How much workforce I have, do I have enough suppliers, do I have enough vehicles, how are my hub operations, at what distance is my hub. So we had one hub in Noida, one in Gurgaon, and then we opened up another hub in Noida because Noida was growing like crazy because Ghaziabad started picking it up. So, and from Greater Noida to send stuff to Ghaziabad at 5 a.m. in the morning, it was very difficult to cover that many homes. So we had to open another hub over there. And then there needs to be packaging material in each of those hubs because these are fruits and groceries. So packing each of them requires a different kind of packaging, and then the government regulations around it. So you see, that one particular metric, monthly groceries delivered on time, brought the entire company together. There were metrics that we could track at every KPIs that could be built at every stage. There were experiments written at every stage, and we had a lot of failure along the way. It's not an easy task, right? Now, to be able to run each of these efficiently, we also needed the ops to be, an integral part of the growth team. So we needed 1 or 2 guys from the ops guys saying that, these guys are our growth spokes. Their job is just not to deliver orders on time, but their job is to help us deliver an order on time so that we can have more groceries delivered on time. Cool. So we've now gotten into a view of what the North Star metric is, how to divide it into KPIs and everything. Now, how do I build teams, right? so ignore the business head part or whatever it is. Okay. Think of so if you're a small company, think of them as different verticals. If you've really scaled up, think of them as business heads. So this is what a typical, if you see the red horizontals, this is what a typical startup is, right? You've got product, tech, marketing, logistics, customer support, operations, NPD in case of D2C, right? Uh, and we have heads looking after all these functions. Now, if you want to develop a growth team for a particular vertical or even for your core business, you develop a squad around team members from each of these teams. It is very imperative to not just have marketing and product to be a part of the growth team. It's important that to solve specific problems, right? You have someone from logistics and operations also when required. Okay, because they are going to look at metrics which are very operations driven, which is cool. But if you have to drive growth, you need to have KPIs which dovetail into your overall growth KPI, which is your North Star metric, right? So creating squads across all these different all these different employees is something which will bring all of them together to deliver on the growth experiments, the set of growth experiments that you want to execute. And uh, and this is not as complex as who reports into what, so on and so forth. This is as simple as people doing a daily stand-up at 10 a.m. in the morning, every alternate day, with one person from all these teams who is responsible to move the things along to meet us to make a particular experiment or a tactic successful. That's it. It's as simple as that. And someone scribes it, someone makes sure that they run it like a project, so on and so forth. Cool. So this is what we've gone through today, right? We've gone through what the North Star metric is. If you tie that with the growth pillars, you kind of get an idea how growth pillars just solve one part of the problem, and it's not like the overarching. It's a very basic way of structuring how to drive growth as a problem. We've gone through growth loops, we've gone through growth boards, we've gone through growth experiments, and briefly about how to drive, how to create growth teams. I'm open for questions right now, and we'll see how the questions go. And if there's time, I'll take you through another framework towards the end.
Yeah, awesome. Whoever has questions, you can just either unmute yourself and then start asking. Maybe Daman, that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Daman, I have a question. It's Avinash, is it?
Yeah, Avinash.
Yeah, hi. So it's about designing the growth team. So like when you are running a startup, so kind of every role is part of the growth team. So how do you define which is not a non-growth team member? So like because everyone is kind of driving towards building a revenue or increasing the user base. So who is the non-growth team member, if I have to understand as a concept?
Actually, that's a very mature question, because usually I get the question the other way around. That everyone's doing this stuff in a startup, so who's part of the growth team? So see, it's awesome that everyone's inclined to growth. So you solve the main part of the problem. The key issue here is how are you creating metrics and KPIs around each of these people so that you're hitting a North Star metric. So let's say you're a 10-member team, everyone's doing the thing, the tech is writing the code, someone is making sure that the packaging is coming on time, so on and so forth. But if everyone is focused on the North Star metric and is given visibility, saying that, let's say your metric is orders shipped on time, right? So number of orders shipped on time, and you put that as a North Star metric on a daily basis, and you write that number on a board saying that we have 15 orders shipped on time, and tomorrow you have 12. Okay, the way to get everyone aligned to this is, if we ship 12, is it because we got the traffic less? Is it because we ran out of inventory? Or is it because the shipper did not come? So you start creating risk mitigation strategies around each one of those, and that's how you bring everyone together to drive growth. Having said that, each one is doing their job on a daily basis in terms of doing the best they can to work out supply, NPD, so on and so forth. But the North Star metric is something which will get all of them aligned and get all of them motivated, so to say. Because growth is also a very fuzzy term, right? What are you defining as growth? And here's an interesting concept for you. Even at Global Bees, there are months which we say, this is a month for revenue growth, or this is a month for EBITDA growth, right? Where we say we're not going to focus on revenue that much this month, but we need to get our EBITDA shit together. We need to make sure that our input metrics to the product is such so that the cogs are at a reasonable level. We have to figure out a shipping partner, or we have to figure out RTOs are not happening, which may be because of product quality or maybe because of a payment mechanism, so on and so forth. So that is something that you need to configure about how you want to bring the team around a particular metric. Otherwise, I mean, startups by definition are growth, right? If you don't grow, we die. The incumbent kills us. So I mean, I hope I could answer your question on that.
Sure. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So it's about the building the culture in the startup, that what kind of rituals we can develop, because growth is something which has to happen regularly. People have to be driven regularly. They need to stay motivated and all that. The jobs do not become monotonous. So can you suggest some rituals which you can inculcate in the culture, kind of daily meeting, or I don't know, whatever, if you can suggest anything?
Oh, well, it's interesting you ask that, because just yesterday I got a video done about what the growth team does for the rest of the Global Bees team, and the rituals that we follow actually. So to give you some of the examples that I use, we have no fear of failure as one of our key concepts as a part of the team, right? And this is easier said than done, because when you're interviewing, you'll need to talk to the person to understand his insecurities. If the person is looking for a lot of validation in his life, right, it's very difficult for the person to be able to openly think about driving growth, right? Because he'll always second guess. Agar maine ye kiya, what will my boss say? Rather, the thing should be, I have conviction in this. I'm going to convince 2 of my team members and we're going to do this experiment. And then I'm going to tell my boss whether I succeeded or failed. So no fear of failure is something which is required. Second is honesty. And this is not the table stakes honesty what we talk about, but this is being true to numbers. We have this principle about bad news first, because we are working with limited resources. We are building our processes and systems as we are growing, right? Cheeze phatengi, we put it very crudely. And my advice to all my team members is, moment something is broken, inform the stakeholders. There's no point delaying it, because that only is going to cause more pain for everyone. And now this is a very difficult thing to do, right? Because this can also be construed as finger pointing or putting the blame on someone else. So it needs to be done in a very right manner. And the way to do this is to have a stand up in the morning, and the leader says, "Kya phata? Now is the time to throw all the shit on the table and we'll solve it." Okay. And that's, so if you create a forum wherein people can, or a time space that people can bring out all the problems, because as business leaders, our job is to solve one problem and the next and the next and the next till the time the engine is created. So you need to create that space wherein people say, you know what, these are things we failed in, or I don't know how to move forward with this particular problem, right? I need help. So that's something that we need. Third is believing in data, right? A lot of times we do a leap of faith because there's not enough data early on in the startup. But once data starts coming in, we need to start listening to data, right? If there's a certain creative which is bringing most of your revenue, but it is not with your brand guidelines, so be it. Yeah, that is your revenue churner. You're not going to shut it down. You're not going to say that this yellow is not the yellow, and this the model in the photo is wearing an Indian dress, but she should be wearing a Western dress. No, I mean, if that's working, it's working. There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, there is, you can shut it down, but it'll be foolish for you to do that, because the data is telling you that this is the way it's going to work, right? So and that also means the other side, right? If you've done something and if it's failed and if it's not bringing in the results, then you need to be true to data and say, you know, let's let's figure out. The one problem that I've seen with people using data is they come to conclusions too soon. You have 3 data points, you're like, oh, ye to nahi chal raha, right? Campaigns need 7 days to mature at least to give you enough data points, right? Just yesterday, I was having we were using a DMP and we got 3 transactions after spending 30,000 rupees. And they're like, oh, nahi, ye to kaam hi nahi karta. I'm like, nahi, bhai, jab tak 10 transactions nahi aayenge, that's when we'll see what our CAC is. Right now, it's looking like 10,000 per CAC, but you may be wrong. So hold on to it. So as a leader, you'll also need to figure out when to look at, when the data is mature enough for you to look at. Because running too many experiments simultaneously also puts you in a hurry, but you need to give each experiment time, right? Some experiments are pretty fast. You can just figure out, okay, you know, if you've got 10,000 users coming into your app every day, you know they're not clicking on the right hand icon that you've changed. You kind of know that's not working, right? So that's one thing. The next one is you need a problem solving mindset. If a person is not self motivated, it's very difficult for them to survive on a growth team, because in the growth team, everyone is struggling on a daily basis, trying to conjure up whatever resources they have to move things forward. If the person needs a lot of push, they're typically going to fail. So that's one thing that we look at. And the last one that we are very clear about is we celebrate every small win, and you celebrate people, right? People need a lot of motivation on a daily basis in terms of seeing things move, right? So as a part of a daily stand-up call, where we say ki kya phata hai, then we also figure out, okay, what worked, right? And if something worked, we go who claps in the air. We're like, okay, chalo, you know, this will at least help us move our revenue by another 3%, and then another 3%, and then the compounding engine starts kicking. Growth happens very slowly, and then it happens very suddenly, right? So another point is, it becomes very difficult as a growth head for me to sell that to my stakeholders, because whenever I go to consult anyone or I start, and even the new founders coming in and globally, they're like, "Hey, Daman, tum yahan pe ho, growth to ho nahi raha." You know, that's something that I hear on the first week itself. So and I personally like to spend a lot of time on building the product part of the pillar, because if I start spending on paid acquisition and I don't have my retention and my referral engine strong, there's no point spending that money, because people will say CAC to itna hai. They will not be able to see the incremental traffic coming in. So some of your growth initiatives will be killed right earlier. So these are the 5 things, yeah, that we typically follow, you know, in terms of building growth teams.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah, Jatin.
Yeah. Hi, Dhawan. So my
I
question.
wanted to ask. Okay,
I'm sorry.
Shall I go ahead? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So my question was, when you talk about experiments, right? So how do you sort of, you can't control the entire experiment. There will always be some macro factors that will play some role in changing the results of the experiment. Like, you want to increase, say, click-through rate, but say a month you are doing the experiment is, naturally that month has higher interest of the customers, the click-through rate will be high. So how do you, shield these outputs from, say, these macroeconomic factors? How do you know that what you have learned is actually true and it's going to be valid throughout?
That's a very good question. Yeah, sometimes the unknown unknowns are the one that kill us.
Yeah.
Right. We think it's because of the sexy banner that we made, the CTRs have increased, but it may just be कि सर्दियां आ गई हैं, sweater चाहिए, right? That the CTRs increase. So that is something which comes out of discussion here. That is something we need to be cognizant about, saying that is this causality or is this causation, right? So that is something we keep questioning, and you can only do this if you have vocal team members, right? So someone says, you know what, मैंने ये change किया, CTR बढ़ गया. The team should be empowered enough and comfortable with someone else saying, you know, ये banner की वजह से बढ़ा या सर्दियाँ आ गई. Okay, so there's no easy answer to this, but you have to keep a lookout. And Google Trends is a very good way to look at this, right? You kind of the example that we're talking about, right? And I'll give a very interesting example. At Boat, we when I joined, I think after 2-3 months, we said, you know, let's start changing the entire creative strategy, and we'll put a lot of the celebs that we have. We'll Photoshop the new earphones that we have on them, and we'll use them as the primary banners. And CTR shot through the roof. And then we're like, मतलब ऐसे होता नहीं है, मतलब इतना नहीं हो सकता. What had happened is, around that time, we also struck a deal with Google. Google was doing a TVC after a long time, and they needed to showcase use cases, and they showcased. Remember, there was this thing about the granny ordering headphones, that TVC. So the search for headphones just skyrocketed, right? Now the intent was so high, and we just layered it with creatives. The CTRs also shot through. Okay, and so then we kind of realized, and the way we got to know this is we saw a spike in Google trends on headphones. हमने इतने पैसे तो खर्च किए नहीं कि we can impact entire India's search for headphones, but Google had ended up spending around 20 crores. So we were like, okay, yeah, you know, so something's happened over there. Yeah. So yeah, these are the things you'll have to keep in mind. Yeah, I mean, you'll have to look at various dashboards, various data points to see what's going on.
So, and this is like when things do good. There are cases when you do an experiment and it's just, you know, you're not meeting your hypothesis. You know, what you thought is not happening. So in that case, should you do it again? You know, say you did 1 month, then maybe next month again.
We've done that. But we very clearly say, right, why we redoing the hypothesis. We because if one thing is not worked before and we're trying to do the same thing again, we can expect only the same results, right? Or so as long as a group we agree, you know what, things have changed now, or Google's algo has changed, or something's happened, let's figure it out. So for example, we did not used to invest a lot in pillar content a long time ago, right? Because we knew if we write SEO blogs, traffic आ जाएगा, बढ़ जाएगा ऊपर. But then Google, I think Panda update tha, one of the updates where it wanted far more contextual content over there, and far more structured data, right? Then we said, okay, now let's start writing pillar content and see, you know, whether the SEO is improving or not. So yeah, there are times when we go back and do it also, but then we discuss, okay, you know, the life has changed right now, so it's worth trying to experiment again.
Hello. Hi. Can I ask something?
Yeah, sure.
Hello. Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you. Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting listening to you. Yeah, I wanted to ask something regarding teams. Like we spoke about motivation being so important and all of that, but sometimes I feel like it is also overrated. Like you can't always positively, tell everybody everything. What is the extent that which you can, sort of really put it down who's not performing, or like?
Ramya, I couldn't get your question.
Yes, so Ramya, actually, Ramya, yeah,
like
I think
how much should you actually shout at?
Ramya, there's a solid disturbance on your side. Can you type in your question?
Should you do that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, meanwhile,
Yeah.
Bhanu, why don't you go ahead with your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Namaste.
Is it better
And-
now? Can
No,
you
sir,
hear me now?
No, so Ramya,
Ramya.
I think if you just can type your question in chat, then we can just answer that. Yeah, it'll be easier. Okay. Yeah, Bhanu.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Great session, Daman. Thank you for sharing your insights on a lot of things.
Okay. Yeah, okay,
I have one
I'll type
question.
it.
So,
Okay.
what I have been a project manager in my past personal career, and I see growth, the experiments as mini projects. So which they are, because they cut across cross section teams, and what and everybody is impacted and everybody is involved also. My question is, when, since these mini projects will take time of the stakeholders, so how much time should everyone give from their daily schedule to these projects? And also, if for a growth team member, if he can only do 10 projects, so what type of projects should we do? Because there are some projects which are long term projects, and some projects which are only short term projects. Like improving a product is a maybe will might have a life cycle of six months, while changing a banner or doing something else will only have 3-4 days, a week, or a 1 month project. So how do you distribute time between different type of projects? Or if there is no theory of different type of projects altogether?
That's pretty straightforward. Yeah, you remember that ICE matrix I showed you, the impact, confidence, and ease, right? What we're
Right,
talking
right.
about is the ease part of it, right? Like changing the banner is pretty straightforward, and
Right.
changing the tech side of things takes a lot of time. And let me give you an example wherein we've not been able to run growth projects. And so I used to consult White Hat Junior, Karan and team on growth. Just before they got acquired by Byju's. And it was a very, very fast-paced growth, right? We were opening up new countries in a month. We were scaling up influencers. NASA had told us to shut down our the ad campaign, the creative that we were using in a sneaky way. So during all of this, we discussed, let's get into conversion rate optimization, right? Let's get a CRO expert and let's start doing that, because every 0.1% would impact us by lakhs, crores. So we got the person in, and the mistake we did is we did not man up on the tech side of things. So tech ke products chal rahe hain, and all those things are going on, and this guy's coming up with solutions and A/B tests and experiment. We got the tool to do A/B tests and everything. All that was integrated, which tech helped us do that. But after that, the changes that we wanted to do to A/B test and everything, tech ne haath khade kar liye. They're like, boss, we have a lot of time. We don't have time. We have to launch this new product, and you have to launch this new feature, and Karan's going to this vertical, and we can't do it. And this guy sat twiddling his thumbs for 3 months, and he left. So there are these challenges that we face. So when we sometimes say, we're going to get a growth team manager or a growth team executive, we don't hire for tech and product or even NPD in the D2C side of things, which kind of breaks the whole growth process. So Bhanu, ye hota hai. I mean, and this is something
And also to manage
which
this,
I understand.
do you use any tool to track this project management? You showed in Google Excel sheet, but there might be other productivity tools that for time management and task
We use
management.
Microsoft Teams. We create a Jira board basically,
Oh,
a Kanban board.
Jira and Confluence.
Something as simple as a Kanban board. Yeah, that works for us. But yeah, I mean, to answer the larger question, as entrepreneurs, we can't hire 10 people, right? We can't have a bench strength to be able to pick up projects like this. So that's a challenge which we all live with. And see, growth as a function got developed. It's just a decade-old function, right? जब मैंने coding शुरू की थी तो growth होता ही नहीं था कुछ, ठीक है. And growth as a function in India has come into the forefront, I think, only 5 to 6 years ago. Like, it's really taken main stage. Growth product management has come into forefront just 3 to 4 years ago, right? Today you have growth product managers in India. Resume dekhte hain growth product managers ke.
Correct.
So and on the app side of things, you hire the core tech, you hire the core product managers, but growth has always been an afterthought, right? So I think we still got a distance to go wherein we say, we allocate, if you're hiring a tech team, X percentage of the tech team's bandwidth is allocated to growth. or the NPT team or the ops team is allocated to growth. So that is something which I think over time we'll start building that. But in the valley, in the more mature startup ecosystems, they've already started doing that. Not now, they've already started doing it 3 to 4 years ago. So I think it's again a cultural thing that we need to figure out how to do that. I'll just answer Surama's question. Her question is, motivation is good, but sometimes someone makes mistake time and again. You need to pull them up. What is the best way to do so in case of low performance when you don't have replacement ready? ये तो HR question हो गया. But this is just standard management stuff. Yeah, you give them feedback. You put them in a PIP. You buddy them with someone. There are multiple techniques that we follow, but I feel that if someone and this is something which I learned only after COVID, unfortunately, empathy. People learn and do at different rates. If you are expecting someone to work really fast, but their inherent speed is half of that, then expecting them to run at twice the speed is unfair, frankly, right? I think the mistake doesn't lie in the person. The mistake lies in our hiring processes and our setting up the expectations. So for me, I learned this during COVID because most of my team that had met at boat were behind a Zoom call for the first 3 to 4 months. Yeah, that's how we ran growth at boat on the website front. I had not met my team for 3 to 4 months, and we figured out, and that's when I realized that people work at different pace, and we need to give them time, and we need to. So sometimes you need to work around the team, right? You cannot say I'm still going to run at 100 kilometers per hour. Whoever's with me sticks around with me. Whoever's not gets dropped off, because that's a team that you built, right? And if you're hiring folks like that and you still want to run at 100 kilometers per hour, you need to rethink at what kind of team you want to build, right? At Global Bees, we had a certain culture in mind, because we had so many companies to work with, and it's a very unique place to work because the founders also coming in with the company. More often than not, you were surprised that the founders also continue with Global Bees, and then there's the Global Bees inherent core team, and the founders used to running the company in a certain way, but he wants to grow also. So how do we manage this whole manthan that is happening? So we needed the growth leaders to be of a certain personality type. So we said we're going to work with that. We're going to work more with the extroverted lot who can over communicate, who can have more frequent discussions, because expectation setting was very difficult. Is very difficult in such a case, because that same thing happens within 2 weeks of joining. Growth ka hai. So yeah, I hope I could answer that question. I think I may have digressed a bit. Dharmin, you want to ask a question?
Yeah. Hi. So I had two questions, right? So first was basically on the milk basket side. So all the examples that you gave, right? So on an average, what were the CAC you guys were seeing? What was the CTR that was there? And what for, let's say, a B2C company or something like that, what's a good metric, rough metric that you keep tracking? And like, what sort of improvement do you expect, let's say, in a year? Like, how do you track that?
Okay. So and I'm being honest about this, I don't remember my milk basket CTRs. It's been a while back. I'll tell you at D2C, what are the metrics we track at? Like I'm assuming you're talking about the website side of things, right?
No, on the app side also. Like for example, what is the cost per install? How long did it take to break even? Like, do you see similar level things happening for D2C companies also?
नहीं,
So for example,
अलग है, बहुत अलग
that
है.
is why I was asking. That is why.
So also in D2C बहुत अलग है. For a beauty and personal care kind of a category which has a high repeat purchase, right? We see conversion rates around 3%, and the leaders even go up to 3.5 to 4%, right? But if I look at the electronics category, it's anywhere between 0.75 to 1.5%, right? The conversion rates. Okay, so that's one. Secondly, even in terms of how your Amazon traffic behaves, right? Your marketplace traffic, and Amazon gives you the most details on that. Your sessions on your PDP versus your transactions, they vary dramatically across verticals. Okay, now conversion rate is a function of this huge, I think 11 variables. I'll just try recalling that. Price, headline, SEO, value proposition, और तीन चार थे यार, page load speed, so on and so forth, right?
Got it.
A lot of, if you look at it, if you look at Amazon, a lot of the product level stuff, the website related stuff is same for everyone, right? Then it starts depending on how you're pricing it versus someone else, what your category is. To give you an example, if I'm buying a skin cream, I have a high intent because I already know the brand I want to buy. Okay. But if
Correct.
I'm buying an earphone, I will not buy it without watching a YouTube video.
Correct.
Okay. And if someone is speaking in my local language and explaining it to me, oh man, it's only then I'll go and buy it. So to increase my conversion rate, is it beneficial for me to put the hero banner in Telugu, or to give enough links in the PDP page saying that, you know, here's a leading Telugu reviewer, and here's what he thinks about this particular earphone. So I mean, conversion rate optimization is a whole science now, right? I mean, there are many tools. VW is a good tool which helps you, you know, put all those variables into place and draw your regression lines out.
Got it.
But one of the company which does this tracking at a very granular level is Rami Circle. They've taken it to a total science. They in terms of you know, conversions, in terms of tracking on a creative level, on a channel level, they've done an awesome job in building that whole infra.
Got it. Got it. But in the home decor space, so we are into home decor space, like premium home decor space in India. That we have not seen many brands. So what is the conversion rate? And for us, repeat purchase is really much lesser comparatively, right? So that is why you always think, does it make sense to, let's say, spend more than like the break-even point in the first place? Because by default, repeat rates are on an average in the industry itself is much lesser. And then there is
Okay.
not much of an industry in the first place for home decor in India, on a branded
Okay.
side or on a D2C side.
So the framework that you might want to think on this is the LTV CAC framework, right? If I look at a straight line and I look at low LTV going to high LTV, low CAC going to high CAC. If you're working in a high LTV business, which in your case, let's say even in with one transaction, the person can spend up to, like, say, 6,000 or 7,000 rupees, right? You can afford to be in a high CAC business. To give you a paradigm, if I'm selling SAP or Oracle, I can afford to put three salespeople to go and close the deal, right? But if I'm selling a Zoho account, okay, I cannot afford to do that. I have to be more SEO optimized. Okay, I have to be able to build more self-serve sign-up tools, right? So that's the framework that you might want to look at rather than a conversion rate framework, right? For taking a decision on what kind of CACs you want to go after.
Got it. So that is why the thing is, most of our ranges were in the higher end, and that is why we thought of starting something on a lower end range, which had more repeatability, right? And that is why I wanted to learn more on the milk basket end, right? Because that is also on a similar end, right? So over there, what sort of payback periods you guys were looking at, and would you say is a good payback
Yeah,
period?
payback period is also a function of your COGS and everything, right? Grocery to 15% ka dhanda hai. So I mean, it's not an apple and orange, and that's a services business. What
It
you're
just
trying to
gives
do
me
is,
an idea as well, right? Like just gives a broader idea that what sort of.
yeah, I won't remember the exact numbers, but I would not compare a services business to a product business. I mean, you'll end up looking at the wrong metrics. You would rather look at a a comparable in the D2C space, which is you will want to look at the luggage space, for example, right? Which is also a low repeat, high transaction value kind of thing. Yep. Yeah, Gaurav.
Yes, hi Daman. Very interesting, because I think we started off the session again thinking about input metrics. So I really kind of enjoyed looking at kind of the frameworks, but we're in the sort of beverage space. We're from.
I love your products, man.
Sorry.
I love your products.
Oh, thank you so much. That's amazing. Thank you. I mean, that made my day. So I mean, we're still a new company, right? We're just getting started off. And a lot of the frameworks that you've spoken about, I feel like, as and when we build the team, as and when we add more people, we can sort of build on those frameworks and kind of make them more and more robust over time, right? But kind of for somebody who wants to start off thinking about growth, kind of how do you recommend, we at least get the ball rolling, say top 5 metrics, or, kind of where all can we start kind of playing around, and especially from an input angle, right? Because for me, my general sense is, okay, let me track revenue, right? And obviously there are some issues to that because we're not solving the problem to begin with. So I mean, just wanted to get a sense of how we could do that.
Okay. So that's pretty straightforward. Yeah. So as an early stage company, you are trying to figure out your product market channel fit.
Correct.
Right. You're trying to figure out which channel works for you, frankly, at this point in time. Is it going to be retail? Is it going to be marketplace, D2C? Is it going to be something like a Meesho? So majority of your experiments will center around distribution.
Okay.
Right. And you'll also want to get a lot of feedback from the user, right? To course correct. So I think in the initial days, you want to do things that don't scale. Okay. Correct. So to solicit feedback with every bottle that you're selling, right? You can incentivize the user, like, a next bottle free if he calls you up and gives you a feedback, for example.
Okay.
That serves two things. One is you're getting the user feedback, and second is your user is engaging with the brand.
Right.
Okay. And behind this call, you might want to keep someone who speaks well rather than just a person who is a customer service rep who will help you track your order. Right. And over there, you'll be able to find out where did you buy my product from? What do you think is a better place to find? So you want to solve the discovery problem early on a D2C, for a D2C company. Okay. And at that point in time, your growth metrics will be more around what are the different channels you're going at, what is the primary offtake on those channels, right? And if you work towards that, and the third is the customer feedback to course correct. I think if you go around these 3 metrics, you'll be able to really go for, and I'm with this, I'm assuming your NPD and your product is fit for sale, right? You figured that part out. You figured out a value proposition, you figured out the brand positioning and everything. Right. So if you keep these in mind, your next set of growth examples will then come into optimizing each of these channels. The typical framework that we follow is we start with 2 to 3 channels, okay, and see what is working. The channel that is working, allocate 1 full-time resource on that, and give the other folks 2 more channels to experiment, and repeat and rinse. Right. To give you a paradigm on the digital side of things, we typically start with Google and Facebook. We see 1 channel working, we put 1 full-time on that, and then we start working with Snapchat, and affiliates, and partnerships, and so on and so forth. And then we figure out another good channel is working, we put one person full-time on another channel, because that becomes a cash cow, right? You can't let someone be second guessing. You can't have groupthink over there. You need 1 person who you trust to run that.
No, I think that makes sense. I think we've definitely been doing the whole customer feedback thing. I think it makes sense to maybe double down on that and look at some of these metrics. No, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Sounds good, Sachin.
Hi, Daman. So we at NowVeg, sell different kinds of teas online, and we are on Amazon, Flipkart, and on the website. We have a website as well. So right now we are doing well on Amazon, and we are seeing a lot of people who are coming back and purchasing again. Retention. People are coming back and purchasing again and again. So what kind of metrics should I look at on Amazon so that I can leverage my website as well?
what kind of metrics you want to look at Amazon to leverage your to leverage your website. You want to sell more through your website.
Yeah, as in, bring more customers to our website, give better offers, and give more products there.
Okay. Yeah, so there is a lot of nifty and sneaky ways to get Amazon user data and get those users to come onto the website, which Amazon doesn't frown upon, but which is kind of the gray area, right? I mean, you can see the board products, you'll figure out कि एक दो चीजें हमने क्या शुरू की थी. But you can also put in an insert which says, if you're in a warranty kind of a player, no, you can always put an insert saying that go on the website and register your details to get a warranty, although the warranty is applicable. Right? You can do this a few sneaky things to get your user data, because that is gold for you, right? For a tea kind of a thing, you can always I mean, I know you can't put a website loyalty program into a product packaging that is being sold through Amazon, right? But you can always ask someone to submit their submit a review also on the website or something like that, right? Or register for what do you say, an event, you're giving them a number or a missed call number or something like that. So to long story short, there's enough literature on the web which tells you how to glean off data from Amazon.
I think, Daman, I could explain my question. As in, I wanted to ask is, there are people who are coming back on purchasing on Amazon. So I think the product is good and the price point is also good. That's why people are coming back and purchasing. I want to leverage my website to sell to more people, because, and what metric should I look at Amazon कि हाँ अभी ये proof है कि ठीक है ये कर सकते हैं कि हम website को और customers आए and we can make more
okay,
profit.
cool. Got it. So you might want to understand where the user is starting, where the user is getting their discovery from. Okay, is it from Amazon search? Are they coming on generic keywords, or are they coming on branded keywords? Right. If you developed a strong brand, right, in terms of branded keywords, and your SFR ranks are then which is your search frequency ranks, they are in good stead over there, then you know you have a reasonable amount of brand recall. It's time to start optimizing your brand for your website for your brand keywords, right? So if the user's journey for your product discovery starts from Google, right, you need to then make sure that your website is ranking above Amazon to drive more traffic onto your website, right? Now, if majority of your, and you said you had high repeat purchase, right? My assumption then would be, yes, your brand name has started becoming great. Okay, then you can also start optimizing for generic keywords, long tail generic keywords, right, which can start driving more and more traffic onto you. There are a lot of, so Amazon will not let you drop your website prices lower than their prices, right? Aapko call aa jayega more often than not. So from that point of view, I would say maintaining price parity with Amazon, right, and running a Google shopping campaign will give you enough data to understand if people are ready to buy from your website. Also, what happens now with Amazon, there is a trust with the whole logistics system. I know अगर Amazon से आ गया तो मेरे को 2 दिन में माल आ जाएगा, okay, और अगर डब्बा डैमेज हो वो वापस ले लेंगे, no questions asked. Now, is that kind of trust already established with your website? If not, then you need to start looking at that. If you want to start your website thing, I mean, you might not want to service all the cities. You might want to restrict the pin code to which the servicing is happening, right, to start building that kind of trust. Because if your product is being delivered in 5 days versus Amazon's 2 days, while you built up the traffic, it's anyway going to decay, right? So that's something that you want to look at.
Okay.
Stuti, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Hi. Yes. So firstly, your entire presentation has given like terminologies to all the experiments we do at Amritam, because sometimes it just feels like we're all over the place trying to do so many things, apart from, of course, there are like 2 aspects to how we work. One is strengthening the processes, and the other one is always about experiments. So your presentation has actually made me realize that there is a lot of weightage to the experiments that we do. It's not just out of our own fun. But so I'll just give, my question basically is that when we decide a North Star metric, I kind of feel like it could miss out on a lot of things. Then that also adds value. Like I'll give you an example that say with the presentation, like I say my North Star metric is how many products were sold in a month or delivered on time. That if that's what I'm looking at, then maybe customer data may not be as crucial for me then, because then all I'm looking at is the number of products I have sold. Or to give you another example, that we started something as an experiment because a couple of customers would ask us a lot of health questions, and our customer support team was not equipped to help them with the specific diseases or illness questions. So we launched a telemedicine app, sort of a pilot project, and we got 10 doctors on board who do not, like, they're not on a payroll. They basically are part of the platform, and we take a small fee and they get the consultation fee. And we connected at least our existing user base who would have any health questions to these doctors. And this is not even our main source of revenue. And we didn't really start this with the idea that we want to generate a lot of revenue from it when we started it. But this was an experiment so that if a customer has a health question, we should be able to answer it. But then when I think about it from a North Star metric perspective, then I don't even know where to fit in. Like, because at the end, my idea is to sell my products. So then why am I making all of this effort and, experimenting this? Or, I might be talking a lot, but another experiment that we ran was we started a mental health podcast during the lockdown, when a lot of people started talking about how distressed they were, and being like, I'm a clinical psychologist, like by my qualification. So I had like a lot of people, a lot of professionals I know. So each episode was into different professionals were interviewed. And again, we know that added a lot of value to our brand, where people said that, okay, we made this extra effort, and obviously no product was placed in it. So again, my North Star metric is not being met because I'm not placing any product. So I can't even evaluate whether this podcast helped me sell a product. But I definitely know that it built a lot of trust and loyalty within customers if they heard our podcast and they felt help, like,
Well,
like
you
something
kind of
was.
answered your question, right, over there.
No, but how do I evaluate that? Like basically my point is that it just feels like I will have to filter out and remove a lot of things that we just do with our brand, because our North Star metric is that the number of products that I'm selling. So like basically,
I understand what you're saying. So I'll give you this, motherhood statement that we hear a lot, that 50% of marketing works. We just don't know which 50%, right? So when you're building a brand, okay, when you're building recall, you cannot have say कि मैं सिर्फ TVC करूँगा या मैं सिर्फ YouTube पे ad दिखाऊंगा. Okay, it has to be a 360-degree approach, and there is a lot of there are a lot of heuristic metrics that you can look at to see whether this is working or not, right? So for example, if you're doing something like podcasts, right, and you will start seeing an increased buzz on your social media, right? You'll start seeing an increased follower base. I think what you're asking me is the exact math of how many podcasts I should do or how many people should I reach to versus what kind of sale I should expect, right? Something.
Yeah, basically, I will feel like I shouldn't do this, right? Because I don't have an exact, like, I know ki acha theek hai, maybe I'll do this and this will get me sales. This may not have a direct impact on my sales, like, maybe so indirectly in the longer run.
There's an easy way. There's an easy way to do that. Okay, let's say you're doing 100 transactions over a period of 4 to 5 days after you've done a podcast, right? You can do a sampling. Get someone in customer service to call up 15 to 20 folks and have a brief questionnaire saying that, thank you. Did you listen to a podcast? If you hear, a good amount of yeses, okay, that has become a source for me to get new users. If you heard, and then if they've not heard the podcast, like, we do a podcast, would that interest you? If you say, if you again hear no, then you understand you're just, doing something which you intrinsically feel is good, but it's not. So if you don't have deterministic metrics, go after heuristic metrics, go after complementary metrics, right? And one of the things that we really miss out big is, because there's so much data thrown at us and a lot of dashboards, is the good old way of getting someone to talk. अब ये इंडिया है, इंडिया में किसी को कॉल आउट कराना बहुत सस्ता है, right? It is one person sitting in your office can easily call out 50 people a day. And if you have that in a structured way, it'll really help you figure out whether this thing is working or not. So for example, at Milkbasket, we knew that doing kiosk activities in the building was not getting us many users. Okay, but we knew something is working out. Okay, and then we figured out what actually is working out is people going down on the evening walk and talking about it. Okay, so then and the way we figured out is because we called them up. It's like, aap kiosk pe aaye kya? Like, nahi, my neighbor told me she's using this. It comes on time. It's kind of like magic. And we figured out the aha moment was when you open the door in the morning and the milk packet is there. That's when people know, oh shit, this works, right? So then we created a referral program. But a building mein aap referral program banaoge na, saying that, you know what, recommend Stuti, and Daman, here's 100 rupees for you. And when Stuti gets the thing done, you like, Stuti feel like, what, Daman's trying to earn $100 off me. He's not the coolest neighbor around. So what we did is we flipped it around. We said ki Daman recommends Stuti and we'll give Stuti 100 rupees of milk free.
Yeah.
Courtesy you. So this was a referral program which was completely opposite of so you also have to realize people don't want monetary currency every time. They also want social currency, right? So it's not always ki 50 वो Paytm ने आधा डाल दिया ना कि 50 रुपए मिलेंगे, so everyone like, अच्छा यही है बस. So if you try to figure out what the person wants, what currency you want, you may not always have to spend money on the person itself. So I mean, to answer your question, building feedback mechanisms and is pretty awesome. There's this animal in the market called the brand manager, who are this awesome set of folks, right? Before doing anything, they're like, मुझे customer से बात करनी है. Okay, वो phone उठा के 10 customer से बात करते हैं. Okay, and for example, I'll tell you for one of the brands at Handmade, we had a brand manager, and she's like, okay, I need to start calling customers, and she started calling customers, and then she's like, you know what, Daman, in this brand, 9 out of 10 women are working women. This is a brand which is going after UTI problem. So we're like, okay, yeah, because they're using a toilet which is not in their home. They're like, it can be that, or these guys are more aware of products like this. And then you're like, you need to start getting creatives. And then I was like, let's put women creatives. She's like, but you know what? Most of these women, they wear Indian clothing. So our creative should have Indian clothing in it. Okay. So because
how did you ask the customers that?
So that's the interesting thing of a brand manager. Now, I want to understand what clothes you're wearing. No, I can't ask that, right? But a brand manager is far better, or someone who's got the gift of the gab is far smarter to get this rather than a customer service exec. So now I know I'd rather put someone in a salwar kameez or a sari, having a laptop bag and saying, we got your bag with UTI problems, rather than a model just looking very happy and saying, my UTI solved. So if you take a lot of feedback, so it's a good old way, right? When I was with Nokia, the best feedback is to come was taking a cup of chai and sitting behind the gala of a small multi-brand outlet and seeing people come in and see what they want, right? वो पहले battery बोलते हैं, पहले camera बोलते हैं. So we're like, okay, the RTB needs to have battery first and camera second. That was heydays of Nokia. Aajkal camera first ho gaya. So you also get to hear all these trends. So I think if you do that, you'll get to know whether what you're trying to do is working.
How to evaluate the experiments.
Guys, I think we've run out of time for questions.
Yep.
Sharad, you want to do a
Yes,
concluding comment
I'll
because-
take. Absolutely, I will. So when obviously started, I was speaking with him, yesterday. He was like, maybe 2 hours is a lot, but I told him, don't worry, it will not be a lot at all. There will be a lot more questions, and 2 hours just flew by. So first, Daman, thank you for being part of this. I want to sort of, just summarize few thoughts from Daman's session. One was, we have this mystery of a growth team. कि ये करते क्या है, कैसे बनेंगे, setup क्या होगा, measure क्या करना है, right? And I really feel this, session with Daman sort of, demystified a lot of these processes, right? And like, Stuti is sharing, we might be doing some of it, right? But it demonstrates a method to the madness that we are, undertaking within our organizations. A few things is, there's a takeaways, like I said, when Daman has put this through, try to apply this to your organization, right? Try to figure out your North Star metric, because while the session is great to attend, understandably, go and directly apply it to your company and spend another 30, 40 minutes with your team members about thinking about this is when you'll be able to take away, key insights towards, driving growth for your team. In some sense, Daman sort of really broke down something like an equation, right? Like, so if you really want to define growth as an output metric, if you want to drive revenue or transactions, what are the really input drivers into driving that as an output metric? So that being said, we also have one thing I want to also share, and Daman will agree, is when we want to think about growth, we need to have this product market channel fit first. So one of those plugs is one of those second sessions coming in this in the second half of the day is from Shalabh from Akira, where we talk about if you want to do product expansion, how should you think about it, right? And is your product market fit already in place for D2C brands before you think about stepping on the pedal for growth? So get those things right. That being said, Jacqueline, can we share the music? So Daman, we basically have this last minute sign off for saying thank you for your time with us, and I also was sharing with Daman, and I feel this session of his is like a preview, right? And then the idea is there might be more detailed session around thinking about building a growth team, which requires us to working hand on hand over a 4-week period for thinking and breaking these challenges for our business. So that being said, Daman, we just have this ritual. You can join us. Everyone, unmute yourself, please. Avinash,
before we leave, I
Rajesh.
just want to do one shameless
Yes.
plug.
Okay,
If you want to know more about D2C, we cover the entire D2C happenings on a newsletter at Global Bees. We don't write about Global Bees on this at all. We just talk about all the stuff in Global Bees, and some of the strategies that I mentioned, they're all mentioned on my blog. So stuff on what to do in the first 100 days. That'll be helpful. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so Daman has a phenomenal newsletter on D2C, especially
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, so we also share with the group. I would also highly recommend all of you guys to register. That being said, if all of you have unmuted yourself, Daman, if you want to join us, you can. We just put our hands in front of the screen. We do a countdown between 3 to 1, and in the end we say go team. So that's our virtual way of saying thank you to you. So ready? So all our hands in front. 3, 2, 1. Go team.
Go team.
Go team. Thank you so much, Daman.
Thank you.
Look forward to the next session.
Bye,
See you
guys.
guys. Bye bye.
All the best.
Yeah. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you, Daman. Bye.